Welcome to the Business with Beers podcast. This is the place where we help entrepreneurs expand their business, build their wealth, and generate passive income. I'm your host, Brian Beers, an entrepreneur who's on a mission to inspire growth from everyone around me. Remember that you need to take the actions others won't, and you can live the life that others don't. Please be sure to check out my weekly newsletter that now drops every Thursday. It includes one quote, one tweet, one podcast recommendation, plus some business and investing insight from me. It's short and it's sweet. My goal is to provide you with just a couple gold nuggets to help inspire your growth. Go to brianbeers.com to subscribe. Hello, everyone. I'm excited today to bring you Josh Hoffman. Josh is the director of franchise development with Groovy Hues, an emerging brand, part of the Horsepower brand family. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Brian, thanks for having me on, man. Really excited.
Awesome. So let's get started to what is Groovy Hues and how is it different than every other painting company out there?
Well, I'd keep going for like an hour, but I know we have fixed time, so I'll try to hit the high level. So one, we are part of the Horsepower family. So I think some people who listen to your podcast have probably heard of us before. That jet engine of shared services, support services, all owned by Horsepower. I think it's number one. Right? It's how you grow a large executive business, but we are a business, Groovy Hues, in the paint, power washing, and gutter space. So it's one we got into that is a really huge proven industry that we said, well, what happens if you put the really horsepower engine behind it? So we really wanted to disrupt this industry from being an owner-operator type model. I think, Brian, the way I like to describe it is that this part of the franchise industry mimics the industry itself. Low barrier to entry. Hey, I want to be a painter, grab a brush, go paint houses. Hey, you want to own a franchise, go wrap your car, go buy some leads, subcontract the work. You just get capped in revenue, right? There's only so much you can do. Taking that profitability, you're paying yourself as an owner, meaning you never have money to reinvest unless you go outside. And some people figure that out, and that's great for some, but if it's not designed that way, I mean, as you know, in any franchise, if it's not designed a certain way, it's unlikely to happen. So we looked at three kind of major things of how do I make this a more executive model business? So we are semi-absentee preferred in this model. So one is having the proper staff. So we come in, we have an aggressive item 7 to make sure that you're very well capitalized for 3 full-time people and up to 4. So we will take somebody who's in the business, but we still want them to have employees to grow. So sales, full-time people, things of that nature.
And what are those roles, those 3-time roles that someone starts with?
Yeah, so you'd start with a GM, and that would be one. About 30% of our system has decided that they want to be a GM, or that's somebody you hire to run the business full-time. A salesperson, fully dedicated to meeting with customers, actually closing quotes.
Yep. And
then a full-time painter, which we'll talk a little bit more about. That's part of our hybrid labor model. I want someone internally for quality control, things of that nature. And then some will start with a full-time power and soft washer. That's one that typically lends itself more to an hourly rather than a salary type role.
Gotcha. And then the GM is the one who's probably doing the project management too, who's like running quarterback on the projects.
Exactly. And one of the things we love about painting is that it's not an industry where I'm managing that job full time. It's all about startup and closeout. Yep. So there's things you can start up and close very quickly. So that GM, again, is doing everything from working with you in numbers, projections, handling the day-to-day, and exactly what you said, project management. But we lean a lot on technology for the actual day-to-day management of the project.
Got it. Okay. So you got paint, you got power wash, gutters, keep going. So part of it is investing up front in more staff so that, you're primed to grow, right? That's part of the Horsepower philosophy in all the brands, right?
Bingo.
Yep.
And then it's, well, how do you do that? Well, the other one is, how do I acquire more money when I'm on a singular job? Because one, that's going to make me more profitable. Single time acquisition still costs me money to get to that customer. But if I can make more money on a project, again, higher margin, and then more repeatability. So for us, it was adding services that made sense with the labor. So for us, that is paint, both residential, commercial, interior, exterior, power and soft wash, which I'll mention a little more about soft wash because we're one of the first to market with it. The curb appeal program, and then gutters. So again, if I'm showing up to your house, what can I offer you that same labor pool can do? There are industries that get outside of that specialty. Those are ones we don't want to go after. We want to make sure this is streamlined. We don't want it to try to bite too much of the apple. So big one is soft wash. Again, everybody knows about power washing. It's typically not good for your home because it's actually just blasting 3,500 PSI of water at your cedar siding or your garage or your deck. All that's doing is stripping it. You're losing part of that wood, meaning you're going to replace that more often. It's actually doing more damage to your home. So the soft wash, we use a proprietary surfactant, and it's like this bright pink slime. And what that does is hold an eco-friendly, safe bleach to your home to eat away at mold, mildew, dirt, and it sits, and it's better for your homes. And then I'm washing it off very softly for the soft wash. So
They're rinsing it, basically.
Rinsing it. So it's like a better, I mean, I like to think of it as going through like a car wash. And okay, well, why do I want the best package? Well, here's what it's going to do. So especially if you're painting, you're actually getting a better bond and adhesion, meaning as a consumer, I want to pay a little bit more upfront for a longer, lifespan of my home, lower cost per year in maintenance. And the beautiful part for painting is it doesn't take jobs off my plate, because guess what happens in 4 years? I at least know in my world, my wife either decides she hates the color in about 3 years and I decide I'm going to change it, or we move, we outgrow our home, and my realtor says, hey, you have to paint it gray. So It's something that a lot of value to that homeowner, but doesn't take away from the market in any way. And then the gutters is another one. If I show up to your home and say, hey, I can add this. So these couple of hundreds and thousands of dollars that add up, not on every job, but on the ones here and there, it's going to raise my average ticket, raise my profitability. And that's just something no one else is doing, because everyone else can show up and, I mean, anyone can slap paint on your home. So That's the last one that's really unique about us, is our signature curb appeal program. So we have software that we'll take a picture of the home and we can drag and drop eye catchers from the curb. So that's what we call it, the curbside appeal program. Statistically, there's 3 things your eyes catch the first thing when you look at a home: front door, shutters, and then it's either your garage door or the railings up front. So what happens if I can make those all really unique for you? Custom cedar shutters, wrapping your columns, replacing your rails, helping your home look different than your neighbors down the street. To a consumer, that feels like total renovation for a fraction of the cost, because, hey, are we really doing any heavy renovation or adding a sunroom? The answer is no. We're doing very simple things that a consumer can't do. And then the beautiful part is how that plays to the neighborhood. In home services, we all know about word of mouth. So, hey, I want to look different than the Joneses down the street. We get it done. My wife's happy. And then the Joneses go, we're not going to let the Hoffmans keep a nicer house than us. And all of a sudden, Groovy Hues is back with them.
So what's the column? So they take like a circular column and you box it out and make it look different? Like, I don't know. I've never seen that before. What does it look like?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different options. So there's things like, hey, maybe I want a brick look, like a brick column look. Well, they have faux brick that you can actually put together and put around a column, or something as simple as maybe I just have classic square columns that are painted white. I can actually wrap those in a custom cedar or really any sort of material you want. Those are things that we can basically drag and drop on our visualizer so that consumer can see it on site. And I basically play with it like a design software. And then, hey, our estimating software is spitting out a price. So very consistent, but still very unique to that consumer.
Okay. And what are the startup? You mentioned, there's a higher startup cost. What is, your current startup cost for one of these?
Yeah. Item 7, you're going to see a range of, I think it's 265,000, excuse me, 253,000 up to 465,000. Big 2 pieces in that. One would be vehicles. So if I've got 3 full-time people, hey, they need ways to move around and I want moving billboards. So that's a painter van, that is a power washing truck with the rig attached, and then a sales vehicle. So you'll see a big range. It's actually in our item 7. You can actually lease that at 47,000 or outright purchase up to 200,000. So that's 150,000.
So that's the big swing of it, is the vehicles.
The other one would be is what we call front loading. So one of the things that we see in franchising is that everyone wants to keep their costs low. So they don't borrow as much as they should. They borrow the first 3 months, and then what happens? Months 3 to 6, 6 to 12, your wallet gets tight. So we go really heavily aggressive on marketing capital as well as operating capital. So when you look at all the things that we load into your first year, we're saying, hey, take 3, 6, 12 months of X, Y, and Z. So it's about $120,000 in operating capital so that you can make the best decision for your business. So when anytime somebody tells me that's a large investment for a painting company, it's not wrong, but really what it is the operating capital to get to where you actually want to go.
So cash. So your model is to borrow more cash, assuming most people are going to the SBA or however they're funding it, right? To borrow the cash up front to have a runway for themselves, B, then to spend it on marketing over the course of whatever, 6 months, 12 months. And so that they're a little bit more comfortable with it rather than whatever the minimum would be, $120,000 startup. And then now they're like, but then they're running out of cash relatively quickly and maybe not building the business as much.
You nailed it. I said, I did in my business, I was very much owner operator. I owned a paint company and a competitor, and I constantly made decisions based on my wallet, right? Like hey, business
Yeah,
partners,
you have
hey,
to. Yeah.
there's just not money in the bank account to do this, even though it's the right thing to do. So if I mitigate that and say, hey, I'd rather have more than less, borrow someone else's money, especially with the SBA, that's not a profit center. It's not a profit program for them to make money. So I can pay that back in time. And if I can do it at a larger scale and keep margins in place, it's a no-brainer to us.
Gotcha. Okay. And at Horsepower, you have a number of banks, right, that you guys work with specifically?
Yeah, so we do have a direct
brands. You do?
Well, yeah, we work with a direct lender. So just with our size and scale, so with our 7 brands going on 8 very shortly here, we actually have a Horsepower division within Huntington Bank, who's just one of the largest SBA lenders out there. So we have that. We also do have outside partners for people who typically, and I'll say this for our business, we'll do a mix and match of how they're funding this business. So maybe it's the 401k rollover program. Maybe it's a HELOC. Different things that can work for different people. We have partners for any of that and funding this business, and we'll also help you make that decision just with general guidance, and again, can get you professionals who are going to help you make that best decision.
Yep. So before we go any further, you touched a little bit on it, but yeah, talk about your background a little bit. I guess, how did you get into franchise and how did you get into this role?
It's a good question. I guess I didn't go into that at all yet. So I got into it. I was actually in college in the heart of the housing crisis, and I needed to pay rent. And if I could get enough hours, I kind of wanted to pay for some beer. So the way I could do that, I was in the western suburbs of Chicago, got a job painting houses. Lo and behold, it was a franchise. Had no idea what a franchise was at the time. And it was a struggling location. Had the opportunity to acquire it. I'd love to say I was a genius for doing so. It was probably not the right time, but I didn't want to say no. So I took it on. I never looked back. So I ended up running that business for about 7-8 years. Ended up on their coaching side. So coached a number of franchisees throughout the country. Moved to another home service franchisor who they actually just started with a singular paint company and grew to about 9 different brands. So I served as their trainer. So I built out training programs for franchisees, their employees. Ended up running a handyman concept as a brand president. So got a real look at all things in home services, and then got to Horsepower through actually a lot of folks who find us, like through someone like you, Brian, a franchise consultant. Yep. Said, hey, you should check out what Horsepower is doing. And I, in my own insulated world, I'm like, in Omaha, Nebraska, is there really this awesome company? And so I fly out, and man, they got me to move to Omaha. I'll say they're doing something right if they got me out there, but they passed the that makes sense test, which is at every level, whether I'm an employee, a franchisee, or a corporate employee. I look at what they're doing and go, yep, that makes a ton of sense. They're not just doing things differently to be different. It's all things of the way the franchise system should really operate. So I've been here about 1.5 years. I started with our Mighty Dog brand, which is our founding location, Mighty Dog Roofing. And then we launched Groovy Hues about 5 months ago. And I get picked on all the time. There's something about paint I can't stay away from.
There you go. Yeah, so let's talk about that. So you launched the brand in November. I mean, the traditional model for Horsepower is you find an existing independent business that already has like the systems and the process and, successful, and buying it, maybe rebranding it, most likely rebranding it, right? And then kind of launching it as like the founding location to duplicate out. Now, I know that's not what happened here. So I guess talk to me about why that didn't happen and kind of what the plan is.
Yeah, so this is a unique one even for Horsepower, which all the unique things we're doing is kind of crazy. This is our first from scratch brand. So no founding location, no parent location, no corporate locations. We have about 20 owners that we've placed now in Q1. So doing very well. The question comes down to why. So for a lot of our brands, there's something I like to call that there's industry intellectual capital that needed to be grabbed. So if you're thinking of roofing, custom glass, shower doors, if we started those brands without any insight into the industry, typically you then run into like founder or entrepreneur syndrome, which is, let's do an estimate from space and we'll call Elon Musk to help us with it. And you'd have anyone in the industry go, all right, you're a little too far out in left field. The second is, hey, in some of these more blue ocean type concepts, what can the profitability be like? When I say something like organization or frameless shower doors or spray insulation, you knock on, I'll call it 50 of your neighbor's door, and you say that, you're probably getting 20 to 30 different answers. So again, it's established. What do the numbers look like? That's why we go after them. And then like any home service business, typically they're just under sophisticated in marketing, technology, repeatability, the franchising space of it. That's where Horsepower comes in. So Groovy was one that myself being a part of three or four major paint systems. Zach, one of our founders at Horsepower, owns a paint franchise. What we knew is that we knew the insides and outs of it. What works, what doesn't work so well, how should you do it? So we had that, and nobody knows it quite like us. And then the second part was that item 19 that typically people want to look at. There's a lot of public data out there. So when folks go through our process, we're not just looking at a singular business or maybe 5 or 6. We're looking at how does a paint company work throughout the country? How does this industry, profit-wise, all those other things? So that's all out there and publicly available. So we looked at it and said, yes, we could go out and acquire a multi-million-dollar business, but it wouldn't have been a good use of our money, right? And so what we did is said, we'll take that capital and reinvest into the franchise system, better technology, better marketing, all the different things you're seeing here. It was just a better use of our money. And again, we knew what we were getting into when we were doing this.
Yep. Okay. So launch in November, you said you have 20 franchisees as of today. I believe offline, you said that represents about 60 territories. How big is a territory?
Yeah, so we go by population. So 200,000 in population protected by territory. Those 20 owners, I believe, I want to make sure I get the number right. It's either 62 or 63 territories.
They have roughly 3 each. So they're buying whatever, 600,000-ish people, something like that.
Exactly. So compared to, we are what I call multi-territory, not a multi-unit business. If I want to start a great model, we call it a 7-Eleven, right? If I want 3 7-Elevens, you look at that item 7, you're going to triple that investment. For us, as long as your area is contiguous, hey, I might want to grab a bigger footprint with the same capital, same investment, same amount of equipment that I can then reach. So that's where 3 becomes a sweet spot for most, and they have area to grow into.
Yep. And their only incremental cost is the franchise fee up front, right?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. What about the scalability of it? Like, how big can you build? Can someone, and I know maybe not you guys, or I guess maybe you guys, but how big can you build a painting business like this? Like, can you go across states? Can you make it a $20 million revenue business, or is it kind of more of like a localized, hey, you can make a lot of money, but it's got to be local because you have to be like hands-on involved?
Yeah, so that's where a typical paint company does lie, right? Which is, we talk about that low barrier to entry, which is become an owner operator. Now, we talked a little bit about this, but I just like to hammer it home. You only have so much time in your day, right? So I need to do 10 quotes. I need to start up however many jobs. Quote takes 2 to 3 hours. Okay, there's 20 to 30. I just can't run more than $600,000 to $1 million in this business, being an owner operator, and there's no more money to reinvest. So that's where we said, okay, skip that hump, because that's where the hump is. This is a sales and marketing business, right? So as soon as I have a salesperson, a GM to operate that, and then a full-time painter, I'm subcontracting the rest of the work. So how do I scale? Well, it's adding salespeople. So the beautiful part in this industry is, hey, early on, I start with paid leads, not heavy word of mouth, because I'm just starting my business. Well, that's going to grow. And I'm going to look at an equilibrium point of my salesperson is really in a good spot, has plenty of leads. They're generating some on their own. We're getting just word of mouth, but I am still paying leads. Well, those paid leads are still out there. So what does that tell me as a business owner? Well, one, Horsepower and Groovy Hues has the dashboard to tell you, hey, there's 60 paid leads out there that you're not buying this month. Well, what that tells me is, okay, I can go get another salesperson, and that GM can handle more capacity. They can handle up to 4 salespeople. So at that point, I then can get into it. We also have those multiple service lines. We anticipate gutters and power washing will be their own full-fledged force within Groovy as it grows over time. So simple answers, and I'll speak to, and I don't want to name the business by any means, but there's franchise companies out there that have single locations who are doing $20 to $35 million. That's not unheard of. The beautiful part about Horsepower is that what we see is, rather than go wide, because there is a point where you go, hey, I'm probably not going to grow much more than this. Well, back in the day, if we were just doing painting, great. If I live in, and I'll use an example, Omaha, Nebraska, I need to then go think about opening a location in Chicago.
Yeah. Yep.
That can be tough to do, especially in home services. So instead, what we recommend is stacking your brand. Because in home services, the first thing, if you've ever done anything in your home and had somebody do a good job, the first question you ask that person, do you know somebody who does X?
Yep.
Well, on Horsepower, the beautiful thing is, hey, maybe I add on a Mighty Dog Roofing and iPhone. Hey, a Blingle holiday lighting? Hey, we also do this. Oh, I didn't know you guys did that. Absolutely, I want to service you. So I build out that customer list, and then guess what I'm doing is I open my second brand. Email blast to customers who already trust my business, already trust Horsepower. Well, now I'm starting with a very large business out of the gate with trusted customers, and I'm cross-saturating. So the other beautiful part of that is even if I don't own every horsepower brand, right? And we will have 15 by 2025. That's okay. Because what that means is, hey, Brian, maybe you own the iPhone and we live in the same area. I have my own little internal BNI network, because when you go in to do the spray foam installation, hey, we'll put back up the drywall, but we don't touch X. But I do know a painting company who can do this for you. I do know a lighting company. So again, it really is like an intra network, whether I own it or not, but a huge opportunity for an empire builder.
So of your 20 franchisees are signed up, are any of them existing horsepower brand franchisees and other brands?
So I will say that we have a lot of our owners who have looked at our other brands who ended up landing on paint, but they are not any second owners yet. We do have a couple in the pipeline who are targeting it. This tends to be a hot time of year, so typically that'll happen July, August, as your business kind of settles a bit from the summer rush. Yep. So we'll definitely have that. We don't currently. The other beautiful one I'd say about Groovy that we get a lot of folks really attracted to us is that we're somewhere in the middle of our spectrum of brands, right? If you're somebody who says, I love need-based services, the nitty-gritty, your iPhone, spray insulation, your roofing might be for you. On the other side, you might look and go, I don't want to touch any of that nitty-gritty. We have our really heavy design brands. So that's Blingle Lighting, that's Gatsby Glass. Something a little bit sexier, but still home service need-based. Groovy is kind of the sweet amalgamation of that, where we look and say, well, there's always need-based. Everyone's got to paint their house, but there's also that inspiration, design, social media aspect. So it's really the best of both worlds when we look at Groovy.
Okay. Yeah. The other aspect too, and I mean, a lot of your franchisees are new, right? Just in general in horsepower, because you're a relatively new brand. So I'd imagine most people who are just getting started and learning the business, and maybe they're not profitable yet because it's still early, it'd probably be a lot for them to take on another brand so early right.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we like to go fast at horsepower. I mean, we're named horsepower for all intents and purposes. Yeah. We do want to be responsible, and I like to call it intelligently aggressive. So I describe it as a really fast motorcycle. That is any of the horsepower brands. We're not here to slow you down, but we are here to give you the warning signs of, hey, a curve is coming. Hey, this is your first time riding a motorcycle. Maybe we don't go 140 out of the gate. Maybe we learn how to ride a little bit. So it's guiding you in that way. So we are, I don't want to say very selective, but we do work with you financially to say, hey, is your business in a place that you're ready to step onto the next one? And some are ready in 3 months. Some are ready in 12 months, some 24 months. Some will never want to go over 60 miles an hour. That's okay. It's your business. But I think across horsepower, we're now up to, and we're going to year 3 for us. I think we have just shy of 20 multi-business owners who have at least 2 horsepower brands, and we'll have our first entering their 3rd coming up this year.
Yep. And it's a challenge. And I have my primary business, and over time we tried to expand to other ones, and we had challenges from I was the franchisee in both, right? And then it was like a diversification issue now, and because we were going for diversification, I had a dilution problem where then my focus was diluted between these 2 different things. And then the new one never really could take off because I kept being distracted by like the stable, like cash flowing one. Now they were completely different. There's no synergies, at least in these, like they're both home services. There are probably a little bit more synergies than the mistakes I made. But
I'd want to double down, because that's something that horsepower has seen, right? So corporately, we have over 250 employees for our 7 brands. So you are well supported out of the gate. The sneaky one in that is you're going to need different coaching at different time. Hey, day 1, none of our owners know anything about paint. We are not looking for people who know home services. We're looking for business executives, smart folks out there, white collar folks who want to have a profitable business. Well, in your scenario, Brian, in business 3 or 4, are we going to give you the entry-level coach into painting? Maybe for a second that works with that GM, but what coaching do you need? Hey, I run 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 30 locations. I'm having different conversations. I'm having different challenges. So horsepower actually has business coaches in place to coach you at the different stages of your business, and even people within your business to say, hey, maybe I want to add a GM or a salesperson. We have that coaching at the base level and then that much higher business consulting level, because there's just really different needs at different times for franchisees, and we're well aware of that.
Yep. So one of the objections I get when I talk to some people about painting is that, a lot of painting is and historically has been dependent on home sales, right? People moving in, people moving out, they want to sell it. And then the new people that want to move in want to paint it, right? So you could get 2 paint jobs at the same house within 30 days or whatever, right? Crazy. But if home sales are going to go down, which appears they are, that people may be painting their houses less, right? And painting as an overall industry may go down. Like, how do you respond to that? Like, is that true, or is it just going to change where people now aren't moving and they're staying in their home, and now they get bored and they want to paint it because they're not going to move? What's your opinion of it? And then I don't know if from a data perspective, if there's anything that backs that up.
I'll start data perspective because I think that's the one. So I'm a big fan of the IBIS World reports. They're projecting, and it has increased every year for the last 15 years now, of a stable 5 to 7% growth. So right now, painting is a $26.5 billion industry. That is still trending up. There's nothing saying that is going down. Now, to your point is, what do we think versus what's reality? So certainly that's a market, right? And I can tell you how many times someone goes, hey, I need you to paint this room beige to sell. And 60 days later, first-time homeowners go, I want this to be my childhood bedroom color, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're painting it 60 days later because you still did a great job. That absolutely happens. We then go into the maintenance and design and focusing on, hey, we're in rough economic times. What are people actually buying within painting? So simple thing, in great times, it's very, very design focused, right? New colors. I got a new furniture set. I'm going to change the living room color to match. Great opportunity. So it isn't there. The second part is, you still need to maintain your home. So the PCA, so the Paint Decorating Contractors Association, which is really kind of the grand oversight of the painting industry and what should be happening, recommends you paint both the interior and the exterior every 5 to 7 years. Now, I say that on a caveat of, it's a lot like an oil change where they go every 3,000 miles. And I don't know a single person who's like, yeah, we can get a little bit longer. That's probably the truth. So even in that, let's call it 10 years, every 5 years I'm doing something. And then we talk about the second portion, which is people typically don't paint everything at once. So this year it's an exterior maintenance. Next year it's the deck. Then it's the fence. Then it's the garage. Oh my gosh, we had a really windy season. Now I'm power washing again. Well, we know about economic times in the US. Things typically last, 2 to 3 years before they bounce back or go somewhere else. Well, now we're moving again, or we're downsizing or upgrading. So then it comes into the focus within painting. Right? So what is my marketing going to look like when I know the economy is great? Design, paint your daughter's bedroom, paint the new baby's bedroom. Where in not as strong economic times, what am I doing when I go into that need-based customer? Well, I'm going to look at Mr. Jones and say, hey, Mr. Jones, it sounds like you're going to be in this house for a while. Yep. Great. So let's look at a better quality paint. So that's where that soft wash comes in. Our relationship with Sherwin-Williams. Hey, this paint, instead of lasting you 7 years, this is going to last you 15 years. Well, with our software, what am I going to show Mr. Jones? Your cost per year in maintenance goes down. You have the money to do this today. And then conversely, that person who is moving out of their house, hey, you don't need your paint job to last you 10 years. Let's get you contractor grade paint. Save that money. So it's really focusing in on where the dollars and cents are going and what makes sense to a consumer, but it never goes away. And then we go back to what happens in 2-3 years. Things bounce back, somebody moves around, and I'm back to where I go. So it's all on focus. We're very aware of it, but looking at it and saying, hey, somehow this is going away. This is where I think Groovy Hues really got it right. There's some companies out there who say, we want to be the lavish company, the high end, or hey, just need-based. You're segmenting yourself off where painting is painting. Being able to offer the different services, whether you're high end, I'll use a restaurant example. I want to go into a restaurant that I can either have a T-bone steak, or if I'm just feeling a cheeseburger, I can have that too and still have a great experience. That's where Groovy Hues lies. So simple answer is, we're aware of it. It's not something we're truly concerned about, but we're on top of the trends to make sure that our franchisees can have the right target audience.
Yep. Okay. So that gets me into then, I guess let's talk about lead generation and, how you guys do the marketing. Let's just talk about the marketing package in general. So like, what's the responsibility of the franchisee, and then what's the responsibility of, Groovy/Horsepower?
Yeah. So this is one, and I'll say this, and it probably doesn't sound really pretty on a podcast. A franchisee is solely responsible for their marketing, right? It is your job. Otherwise, if we were going to just do it for you, no one would ever sell their franchise concept because they would just do it on their own. So what we do have is a playbook. Hey, here's where your marketing budget should go historically and in your area of the country. Here's what we see trends the best. So we get data, we get reports from not only our marketing company, so we do have that internal digital marketing company. We have the external third-party aggregates, your Angie's List, your Home Advisors, your Thumbtacks of the world. All of that plays in. And I want, again, multiple streams of, I don't want to call it income because that's a little bit different thing, but I want multiple lead-in sources. So we're looking at that. The second is putting together a program of how do you generate organic leads, right? So with your team, it's, hey, things like home shows, how do direct mailers play in, even things like geofencing, things that you can do at the local level. And then we talk about how to properly actually network a customer. And I laugh because I want to apologize to any customer I've ever done this to in the past, because if you happen to be listening, it's the most uncomfortable thing in the world. It happened to me the other day, where in 2011, at the end of a paint job, I would go up to a customer and say, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, if you know 2 or 3 people who are looking for a paint job, I'll get you a $50 visa. And you're like, I don't know anyone who lives in the area, nor do I know if they need to paint. What am I going to network? I just spent $4,000 on a paint job. I'm going to network my friends for this? What's the proper way to do it? Well, I have my salesperson who's closing out the job. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we know you're really happy. We definitely want a 5-star review. By the way, if you could, leave us a Facebook review on your Facebook and tag our Groovy page. Well, depending on the customer, now I've just reached thousands of people, likely in the community, who every time they comment and go, your house looks so cool, we love the curb appeal program, or saw that pink surfactant, guess what I'm getting? Name, all these things, and my page is then responding to them. So it's things like that. How do I do it properly, organically? Again, even things like knocking on doors, there's a right way to do it. We put that program into place, the paid advertising, and then comes to the long-standing networks. So I think one of the fears for a lot of business owners is, how do I really go present my brand? We not only teach and train, but train you and your people how to go meet with a realtor group who's going to constantly give you that flow of income. Your insurance agents, how do I speak to them? How do I get them to recommend us? Now I've got a bevy of services and a bevy of lead sources. That's all coming in. But at the end of the day, it does cost dollars and cents. So that's where we're in item 7. If I ever go through an econ call with somebody, they're seeing there's $60,000 plus of marketing dollars for them to use. And then we also have, I go back to that dashboard because I think this is important. We do weekly, if not monthly, ROI plays on marketing to say, where did the lead come from? How did it convert? What was the profitability? What was the size of the job? Because if your marketing budget, and this is true for any business owner I've ever met, if your marketing plan is the same and you review it every 3 months and you keep it the same, you're missing the boat in some capacity, right? Things change, markets change. So we're constantly reviewing that with you, and you have that data at your fingertips to make informed decisions on your business.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely a suite of way more stuff than I was thinking you were going to say. So from the digital side, you guys handle all that, right? Does the franchisee say, hey, I want to spend so much on SEO or, geo-targeting or whatever the fancy terms are. And then your team, like, they don't have to make the buys, right? You guys make the buys for them. Is that correct?
Yes. So I want to elaborate just a little bit more because it is very different than your average digital marketing company. So Franchise Rocket, we own that internally. They have about 80 employees. We have a base package. So we have no commission fee structure. So most companies, Brian, you say, hey, I want to spend $2,000 and
10% or whatever it's going to charge. Yeah.
10, 20%.
Yep.
Yeah, they make a big dent. All of the dollars you're putting in, we're saying, here's where those dollars are going. We're not taking commission. So all your dollars are actually going to direct marketing. But you do also have the power to say, hey, I want to spend even more in pay-per-click because we have that data getting in front of you. Now, it's always your decision. We go, here's what we know we can provide. But you might find, you know what, I really want to lean into SEO, geofencing, even things like we handle social media ads.
Facebook ads or whatever.
Those are things you can make a decision on, but yes, fixed fee.
So they're kind of putting the budget together, say, all right, I'm going to spend, I don't know, whatever, $40,000 of my 60 I have to spend, whatever, $40,000 on some of this stuff. I'm going to spend $10,000 on Angie's List, right, where they're buying a lead for, I don't even know what, $30 or whatever it costs, right? And then they have the other budget that maybe then they're going to spend towards direct mail or door hangers or paper products, but then like boots on the ground go and actually like have to do the work to hand it out or meet the people. Is that? And
that's right? What we hand you is, hey, of this budget, here's where we recommend it goes. But you as the business owner know your location.
Can decide what to do. Okay. And then who's actually the person to go and like do the insurance agents and this and that? Is that the GM? Is that the owner? Is that the salesperson? Like who actually does all the handhold or the handshaking?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in this is the way we phrase it to our owners. anyone in your business is part of marketing, right? If you don't have leads, you don't have a company. So, but primarily, this would be the salesperson and the GM. Now, I say this is a great business that I call it an executive model in that semi-absentee. Hey, we want 10 to 20 hours out of you. But if you said, hey, this is my strong spot and I want to put in 25 hours, I can be the person who goes meets with that realtor. Even something as simple as like, hey, I get the oldest historic house on the block that everybody passes on the way into town. I might go shake hands with that owner. So the GM, the salespeople, they're all trained on that. But I'd say as a salesperson, we want them to be responsible for some of their own lead generation. Obviously not all, but it is definitely a team effort. But there are going to be, I would say that's a fair chunk of hours out of an owner's week.
And then do the leads flow to a call center that you guys run, or does it everything go to the franchisee?
Yeah, great question. So we do have an in-house call center, inbound, outbound. So we both contact leads from form fills or third-party aggregates, also answer your phone, goes directly into your CRM in that way. So all of that is handled top to bottom by our call center.
Okay. And is all that tracked so franchisees can see what the close rates are and like to hold them accountable?
Bingo, right? Call center can't do everything. So all that goes direct in your CRM. So we're always collecting information. Some good, some will never convert, but there's no bad data. So that's always available to the franchisee. And like you're saying, that does flow into our dashboards so that I can see that, hey, I have my weekly coaching meeting with my franchise coach. Hey, for whatever reason, why are yard signs only converting at 70% ratio when I think they should be closer to 90? Is something off? Great, let's go dive into that. So those are, and I laugh because it actually has like odometer types where you see if something falls into a red ratio, I don't even have to digest it.
Are they pretty consistent across like brands in terms of like your different ability to close different channels? I mean, I don't know if you know the other brands, but I mean, between Mighty Dog and what you expect here and I don't know, Heroes, like do you guys have certain benchmarks that you want to try to hit?
They're fairly standardized. The only thing I'd say that's different would be the way we identify it is our blue ocean concepts versus proven concepts. So Groovy Hues would fall into painting as an established industry. Yeah. There's some of those we'd look at and go, we know what this should convert on. Where I'm bringing consumer awareness, and I use a Gatsby glass for an example, I'm going to look and say, hey, it's a bigger ticket. I'm bringing awareness. I need to look at my campaigns in not just a singular focus. I need to look how my direct mailer then played with my networking, then played with my home show. I need to see it a bit as a larger picture in comparison to something like painting, which is for certain avenues. Hey, how many did I convert from this particular lead source? Just because it's more proven. So simple answer is all track the same, but different metrics.
Gotcha. Okay. And so then what are you looking in a franchisee? You touched on this a little bit, but talk to me about like what's an ideal franchisee look like across, for this brand?
Yeah. So this one's a little tough because I don't want to be too generic, because the truth is I really do believe anyone is a horsepower candidate, right? Because it's what we're giving you is the tools. Now you can do whatever you want with that, right? We prefer empire builders. So if I were going to put it into a stock, I don't think there's a particular type of industry you need to come from, right? I mean, I've seen very, very successful franchisees who were a pastor before, who were an electrical engineer to a high-level business sales executive. So I say there's probably 3 real skills that you need to have. One is the ability to understand and interpret a P&L, right? Hey, I'm familiar with numbers. I'm looking at that. The ability to hold processes. Again, if you're a person coming in saying, hey, I don't want to do anything, I just want it to run. I don't know if there's any business that runs like that, maybe a vending machine. But hey, I need to be involved, and you are the one holding the processes that Groovy's going to hand you in that. And then the last is the ability to figure it out. And I think most of our candidates who have the ability and desire to become a franchisee have this, but nothing's perfect, right? There are going to be hiccups. There's going to be road bumps. Anyone can look at a business and find a way to make it fail. That glass half empty. I don't need even the glass to be half full, right? And look at it positively. The glass can just be half full, right? It could just be there's half amount of glass of water. How am I going to fix that problem? And that's what I've always seen from the top personality types of who's going to be really, really successful in the system. But again, executive level skills is really what we're looking for.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's all we got. I think it's a great opportunity, for the right person who kind of sees the model. I think probably looking for more than just painting, like you said, it's power washing, gutters, curb appeal, like, trying to build out kind of this more professional model with maybe some bigger potential. But obviously it comes at a cost, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Want to thank you for having me on, Brian. It's been an absolute blast here.
awesome. Cool. If anybody's interested in learning more about Groovy Hues, you can reach out to me directly or, talk to Josh and just tell him you heard about it here on Business with Beers. So that's all I got. That's all we got for this episode with the Business with Beers podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is to rate the show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on your preferred social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find all my links at brianbeers.com. Please just share the podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. And until next time, remember to take the actions others won't, to live the life that others don't.